Rush Limbaugh receives the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the left goes ballistic. Mitt Romney shows his true colors with his Senate impeachment vote, and the full results of the Iowa caucuses are finally in. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Friday. I hope you've had a great week. There is so much that has happened since our show on Wednesday. I've got to play catch up. I got to get you up to speed on some of the things that are going on, and then we'll end with a little relaxed brain. But first, I've got to give a shout out to Terry M. Terry is always on the chat, always on the live premiere. Birthday tomorrow. So Terry M., happy birthday. All right. So now let's start with State of the Union. We covered the State of the Union address on Wednesday. President Trump gave it Tuesday night. And Rush Limbaugh received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So here we have Rush Limbaugh on his program announcing that he has cancer. He's going to have treatment. President Trump invites him down to the State of the Union, gives him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. First Lady Melania Trump presents it to him. It was a very good scene for someone who has been a trailblazer, a conservative warrior, someone who's opened the doors for so many talk radio hosts and conservative commentary and media in general. It was well deserved, but the left absolutely went crazy. They're freaking out. I call it the Rush acquired syndrome of hate, or rash, because they have a rash. It's like they don't know what to do. They have to strike out and lash out. And we saw it. We saw it this week. Here's one example. Here's CNN's Jim Acosta. Yeah, he's back. And here's what he's saying about the State of the Union and Rush Limbaugh.
And so I think this just really sets the stage, as you all have been saying, for the months to come. Yes, the president had some heartwarming moments during this speech, but he was also engaging in some deeply divisive rhetoric aimed at immigrants, aimed at Latinos.
Yeah, so first I want to just stop it right there to see what this is how he leads into a State of the Union address that was received so positively up and down the spectrum. The President Trump's approval rating keeps going up, and Acosta talks about widely divisive rhetoric. I mean, historically low Black and Hispanic unemployment is not divisive. Funding Black colleges and universities is not divisive. Promoting and passing and signing prison reform, that's not divisive. And yet that's how Acosta describes the speech. And then he gets into Rush Limbaugh.
And while, yes, he was trying to make appeals to the African-American community, it can't be forgotten that he was awarding the Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh, who has a history of making derogatory comments about African-Americans.
Oh my gosh. So he flat out accuses Rush Limbaugh of a history of derogatory statements to African Americans. And we're going to get into that. But first, I want to even talk about the beginning part where he alludes to President Trump trying to make, overtures to the Black community. And this is a tactic, folks, and this is why I want to bring it up. They always try to minimize any efforts that Republicans or conservatives do to spread the message and to lift up people in all kinds of communities. Race doesn't matter. That's what's so great about the conservative principles and conservative philosophy, is because it applies to all people. So President Trump goes out of his way to create programs, create an environment that lifts everybody up. And like I said, that's why we have historically low Black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment. These are real tangible results, but the left try to minimize it. They try and say, oh, he's just pandering because we'd rather call conservatives racist. And it's because they do not want to lose power. If Blacks and Hispanics and other groups see that, hey, these policies actually benefit us. I'm working. I have more money in my pocket. I can save for my children's education. I can start a business. It can thrive, and I'm not going to be taxed to death. Regulations are lower. You know what? I just might vote Republican. That's the last thing they want. So they always try to paint this picture of conservatives as the bad guy, as the enemy, as the bigots, as the racists. And Acosta's little line there is just one example. But now to the meat, all right? The meat is Rush Limbaugh history of these derogatory statements to African Americans. Well, you know who that did not sit well with? James Golden, who goes by Bo Snerdley, who's been with Rush Limbaugh for 30 plus years. He was offended by that. I've gotten to meet James at my house. We were doing a fundraiser actually for Representative Louis Gohmert, who is a stalwart for conservative principles in the House of Representatives. Got to talk to him. He's an awesome guy. He immediately went to Rush Limbaugh's defense. He tweeted this. He said, I just saw the footage from CNN's Jim Acosta saying Rush has a history of saying disparaging things about African Americans. I have been in the studio with Rush for 30 years. I would like to formally challenge CNN and Jim Acosta to provide the list. Well, guess what? There's no list provided. CNN hasn't said anything. Jim Acosta hasn't said anything because there's nothing there. And folks, just to show you how hateful the left can be, they talk about tolerance. They talk about inclusion. All you have to do is go to Bo Snerdley's Twitter page and read some of the comments. It is so vile, and this is coming from the left. Here's just one example I want to put up there for you. It says, Bo is a sitting name for this porch blank, picking and grinning for Massa Limbaugh and his blood money. Go get your skin bleached to match your wasted whitewashed soul, traitor. It's just sick, and it's so frustrating. Here is how Bo Snerdley actually replied to that tweet. He said, this is the extent of intelligence from some of our detractors on the left. You can't engage in civil discourse because perhaps a lack of quality education renders you unprepared for those challengers. We will pray for you. God bless you. So I could go on and on. Just check it out for yourself. It is so bad. But again, it just shows this mindset of the left. So that was Jim Acosta, okay? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got in the mix too. She took on, I think it was Instagram Live, and here's some of what she said.
First of all, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is an extraordinarily sacred award. We're talking about putting someone on the same level as Rosa Parks, for example, in terms of their contributions to American progress.
All right, so her first gripe in the whole Limbaugh thing is that you can't give the medal to him because it's beneath the status of the medal. You should only give the medal to people of such stature as Rosa Parks. All right, I'm going to put this up on the screen. Here are some, it's not an exhaustive list. Here are some of the recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom under Barack Obama. Here we have Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, Gloria Estefan, Bruce Springsteen, Ben Bradley, Tom Brokaw, Oprah Winfrey, Lorne Michaels, Ellen DeGeneres, and Robert De Niro. And there's a ton more, okay? So would you put all of them, Robert De Niro, at the level of Rosa Parks? No, okay? They're given for different reasons, different political reasons, different contributions to society, whether it's art, literature, sports. Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan has received it. Paul Harvey in radio received it from George W. Bush, President George W. Bush. So it is completely fitting that after this career of service in conservative talk radio, that Rush Limbaugh get it. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez adds this.
Rush Limbaugh is a virulent racist. Trump knows what he's doing, and he wants to assert that Rush Limbaugh is somehow on the same level as Rosa Parks. And it's truly nauseating.
So it's just pathetic. And speaking of pathetic, next I want to talk to you about, because we had the show Wednesday afternoon, the Senate voted, acquitted President Trump on both articles of impeachment. He's president. Impeachment is done. And the fallout we have are the Democrats looking so bad. We could do a whole show on failed strategies, failed politics, not being able to read the public. And we also have Mitt Romney, okay? On the charge of obstruction of Congress, it went on straight party line, 53-47. But on abuse of power, Romney gets up and he votes with the Democrats. And here's part of what he said.
Promise before God to apply impartial justice required that I put my personal feelings and political biases aside. Were I to ignore the evidence that has been presented, it would, I fear, expose my character to history's rebuke.
So Laura Ingraham, on her program, she blasted Romney, absolutely blasted him, because he invoked his faith in how hard this was to decide, and yet the evidence was clear. From the House side, from when we had the impeachment vote in the House, we saw that there was no evidence. None of the witnesses said there was anything impeachable. They just didn't like the policy. They just didn't like the process. And Romney says, well, the evidence was clear. Trump's defense team destroyed it, absolutely destroyed it. And yet he votes with the Democrats to convict the president. It's just absolutely, absolutely pathetic right there. And before we leave impeachment, I just want to talk about Rick Scott, senator from Florida, is floating this idea of amending the Constitution to make it harder to impeach the president. And I just want to give you a little background on that in this report from Fox News. It says, fresh off the Senate impeachment trial that resulted in President Trump's acquittal, Senator Rick Scott from Florida is calling for an amendment to the Constitution that would make it more difficult for presidents to be impeached. Scott's amendment would require a supermajority of 3/5 of the House of Representatives in order to approve articles of impeachment instead of the current standard, which is a simple majority. An act as divisive as impeachment must have bipartisan backing and overwhelming support. It should be harder, much harder, for either political party to take the process our founders created as a last resort against a tyrannical leader and use it instead as a tool for the tyranny of a political majority. Scott said in a statement, I look forward to all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle joining me in this effort to protect the integrity of our nation and our Constitution. Well, I absolutely agree. I absolutely support this because we cannot have impeachment just being thrown around as any political tool. The Democrats take control of the House. They have a majority, a slim majority, and now all of a sudden the president's impeached. It should be a lot harder than that. So 3/5 in the House, 60%, and then 2/3 in the Senate for removal. I think that's a good approach. And it would take politics, it would make it, as Nancy Pelosi said, compelling, overwhelming, and bipartisan to impeach a president, and that's how it should be. So next, I want to talk about these Iowa caucuses, because the results are finally in. We finally have results. And here's a report from the Washington Times. With 100% of the precincts reporting, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont held a slight advantage over former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg in what Sanders called the popular vote. But Mr. Buttigieg held a 0.1% lead over Mr. Sanders in projected state delegate equivalents, which are tied to the number of delegates to the Democratic National Convention that will be allocated to the candidates. With Mr. Sanders and Mr. Buttigieg both claiming victory, it appears unlikely that either of them would want to request a recount and risk a material change in the outcome. So what does that all mean? Here's what it means, all right? As far as the votes, the actual votes, Bernie Sanders got over 6,000 more than Pete Buttigieg. As far as delegates, the people who will go to the National Convention and actually vote to determine who the next Democrat nominee will be, it's a tie. Pete Buttigieg comes out with 11 delegates. Bernie Sanders comes out with 11. Elizabeth Warren comes out with 5. Joe Biden comes out with 2. Amy Klobuchar comes out with 1. That's the results. So we'll see, but the fiasco will linger. Next, it's on to New Hampshire, which is a primary. That's on Tuesday. We'll see what happens. Bernie Sanders is leading now. Buttigieg has gotten a bump from this fiasco in Iowa, so we'll see. So finally, I want to close with our Friday segment, and basically anything the Democrats have done could be lumped into this, but it's our segment, Do You Have a Relaxed Brain?
I got what you call, like, I don't know, a relaxed brain.
All right, and like I said, so much could be lumped in from this week. So basically everything I've said today regarding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Mitt Romney can go in the Relaxed Brain segment. But as far as official entries, we're going to talk about PETA, because PETA thinks that the word pet is offensive. It's condescending, it's patronizing to your pet, and they recommend companion or other words instead. Here's a report. It says, on daytime television program Good Morning Britain, Jennifer White of PETA attempted to explain the group's position on the word pet and suggested it should be switched to with more inclusive terms like companion or human carer. A lot of people at home who have dogs or cats will call them pets and refer to themselves as owners, and this implies that the animals are a possession, like a car, for example, White said on the show. When you refer to animals not as the living beings as they are, but as an inanimate object, it can reflect our treatment on these animals. One, calling it a pet doesn't imply that it's an inanimate object. It's a dog. It's a cat. I mean, it's alive. We know that. And I bet you guys can try this at home. When you go home, call your dog or your cat a companion rather than a pet. See if it makes a difference to them. See if they're somehow happier. See if they feel more included in your life. It's just nuts. So next, I want to talk about California and their governor, Gavin Newsom, who wants to take away the physical fitness tests from school kids because obviously it's the left, it's not inclusive, could lead to bullying and other things. Here's a report. It says, Gavin Newsom has proposed halting physical fitness tests in California schools to study whether they encourage bullying and discrimination. Under the proposal, schools would drop physical fitness tests until at least 2024 to study whether the test promotes body shaming or gender identity discrimination. H.D. Palmer, spokesman for the California Department of Finance, said the state has received complaints that the test measurement of body mass index is discriminatory to gender non-binary students. So what's next? What's next? I mean, we could go on and on. Anything from the left basically falls into relaxed brain. But this one is nuts. It's like you can't play tag anymore. Everything kids do is a victory, gets them a trophy, and now you can't have physical fitness tests. I don't know. But folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. Okay, friends, just a little reminder before you go, and no, this does not count against my 13 minutes. Please hit the subscribe button below and tell your friends. And if you happen to miss our last show, you can check it out right here. And also for great conservative news and commentary, please check out GOPUSA.com. All right, folks, we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day.